Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 23.
Okay, so first things first. The commemoration.
Right. The dust hasn't even settled from the visit, and Yuan Chun's first order from the palace is to get all the poems and inscriptions from that day compiled.
And not just compiled, they have to be arranged and graded. This is history being manufactured in real time.
Absolutely. This is about stamping the whole event with an official, permanent imperial seal.
And the sources tell us Tanshin gets this huge, grueling job of copying everything out. Then the Empress herself personally puts them in order, ranks them.
And the goal here wasn't just a book of poems. It was something much more physical.
Much more. The decree was to have them engraved on massive stone tablets right there in the Grandview Garden, the Dagwan Yuan.
To create, and I love this phrase, a 1,000-year elegant affair.
It's basically a monument. It cements the family status. It makes sure that this moment of imperial favor is remembered for, well, forever.
And that order immediately triggers a wave of construction. Jia Zheng, the patriarch, he doesn't waste a second. He's selecting master craftsmen right away.
And at first you have Jia Zhen, Rong, and Ping supervising the whole engraving project.
But then we see one of those administrative shuffles that seem to happen all the time in these high-pressure situations.
It's constant. The guy who was managing before, Jia Chang, he's still tied up with the 12 actresses and all the props from the visit.
He's still counting masts, basically.
Right, so he can't just pivot to overseeing stone engraving. So he's out, and Jia Chang and Jia Ling are in. It's that fast.
So is this just chaos? Or is this how things work when an imperial command comes down?
It's the latter. It really shows you that at this level, a job isn't a permanent title. It's a task. And they're assigned based on who is available right now and who can get it done quickly.
Efficiency over everything else.
Imperial pressure trumps everything.
Okay, speaking of finding immediate solutions, let's pivot to one of the most fascinating parts of the aftermath. What to do with the 24 religious personnel.
The 12 young monks and 12 young Taoists. They were brought in just for the visit.
Jia Zheng's plan seems pretty straightforward. Party's over, send them back to various temples.
Logical, simple. But this is where administrative genius meets pure political opportunism.
And it all comes from Feng Ji, Phoenix.
Well, her and an ambitious mother. The source is very clear that Jia Xin's mother, Zhu Xi, she was looking for a post for her son. She wanted him in a role where he could, quote, use some silver money.
And she goes straight to Feng Ji.
Of course. Feng Ji controls the administration, she controls the money, and she comes up with this absolute masterstroke of a counterproposal for Lady Wang.
She says, don't scatter them.
Exactly. And the reason she gives is pure political genius. She frames it as a risk management strategy.
What if the Empress suddenly needs them again?
What if she has another whim, some ritual she wants performed? It would be, deeply embarrassing to have to scramble to get them all back together.
So she uses the possibility of a future imperial need to justify a present action.
It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And her solution is centralized and, more importantly, profitable. Just send them all to the family's own temple, the Iron Threshold Temple.
Chi.
Right. And then you just give a monthly allowance for their food, their firewood, and rice to one manager.
So they're kept on retainer, the risk is gone, and you've just created a brand new, very profitable administrative job.
It's deeply cynical and just, wow, so smart. But it does cause a bit of a problem internally.
With her husband, Jilian.
Yeah, Jilian objects. He'd already promised that job to someone else, to Yuner. And for him, going back on his word is a loss of face, a loss of political capital.
But Feng Ji is always like 3 moves ahead of everyone.
Always. She placates him almost instantly. She promises Yuner a different upcoming job. It's managing the planting of new trees and flowers in the northeast corner of the garden.
A direct request from the Empress herself.
Which makes it a high-status, important project. So she swaps a recurring money-making job for a high-profile, one-time project. Everyone's happy, and her candidate, Jia Hin, gets the job with the steady cash flow.
And Jia Zheng signs off on it. He agrees to the Iron Threshold Temple plan and says Jia Qin is growing more promising. He gets the job.
And now we see the payoff. The money involved here is, it's stunning.
Feng Ji authorizes Jia Lian to advance Jia Qin 3 months of supply money up front.
And that total comes to 200 to 300 taels of silver.
Okay, for you at home, a tael is a measure of silver, about 1.5 ounces. So 200 to 300 taels is a huge sum. That's easily the annual income for a pretty well-off merchant.
And this isn't a salary, it's working capital. an immediate cash injection.
And Jia immediately turns around and tips the administrator who handled the funds.
The silver is already flowing, all because Feng Ji leveraged a vague potential imperial concern into a real cash-generating position.
So while all this administrative maneuvering is happening, the Empress herself isn't quite done.
Not at all. She issues her second, and maybe more important, decree.
She realizes that after all this effort, it would be a shame to just seal the garden up. It would become, in her words, desolate.
And her reasoning is entirely emotional. It's aesthetic. She's worried that if the garden is empty, talented people will become disheartened, and flowers and willows will lose their color.
It's an amazing line of thought. She takes this philosophical worry about desolation and turns it directly into family policy.
Move the poetry-writing sisters into the garden. Make them residents.
And crucially, she adds one more person to the list.
Baoyu. She specifically says Baoyu has to move in too.
Why?
Her reasoning is purely domestic. She thinks if he's left out, he'll be lonely. The word is lenking, like cold and cheerless, and that would make his grandmother, Jiamu, and his mother worry.
So this royal command, delivered by a eunuch, sets off another frenzy of activity.
A huge one. They have to turn these, showcase pavilions into actual livable homes. Cleaning, installing curtains, beds, screens, everything.
It's a massive logistical undertaking. They're basically setting up 7 brand new luxury households from scratch. So how does Baoyu, the future resident of the House of Green Delights, react to this amazing news? That he gets to live in this paradise with the sisters he loves.
The text says the summons from his father, Jia Zhang, was like a bolt from the blue. He's terrified. He immediately starts clinging to Jiamu like twisted sugar because he's convinced any meeting with his father means he's about to be punished.
His fear is so palpable, but it actually leads to this incredibly rare moment of connection.
It does. He's standing there before his father expecting the worst, but Jia Zhang just pauses.
He really sees his son.
He sees Baoyu, and the text describes his ethereal grace and dazzling beauty. He compares him to the awkward Jia Huan, and then, most importantly, he remembers his deceased son, Jia Zhu, who was so studious.
And in that moment, something gives.
It does. Jia Zheng's dislike for Baoyu, which is so intense it just softens. The text says it lessens by 8 or 9 parts, which is huge for him.
It's a huge concession. You see the patriarchal mask slip. Just for a second.
But it's fragile. The command is still there. Baoyu has to study, he has to write poetry, and he's warned to be careful. The softness doesn't mean the standards have changed.
And just as we feel that tension ease, the whole conversation takes a sharp turn over something that seems so minor.
The name of his maid, Shiren.
Jia Zhang just gets fixated on it. He thinks it sounds flighty.
And it's not really about the name, it's about what the name represents. Baoyu's whole aesthetic, which Jia Zhang sees as frivolous.
His mother, Wang Firen, tries to cover for him, says Jiamu chose it.
But Baoyu may be feeling a little bolder after that brief moment of compassion. He actually confesses. He says he chose it.
And he defends it with a line of poetry. The scent of flowers assails the person, knowing the warmth of the day.
He sees art. Jia Zhang sees indulgence. And that moment of tenderness is just shattered.
It's gone.
He attacks Baoyu for focusing on sensuous and flowery phrases instead of serious classics. It's the core conflict between them right there. And it ends with him just screaming at Baoyu to get out.
So after all that emotional drama, the logistics finally get sorted. Jia Zhang sets the moving date, the 22nd day of the 2nd month.
And for you, the listener, this new map of the garden is so important for everything that comes next. 7 main residences get assigned.
Zhi Baochai gets Hongwu Yuan.
Lin Yu is given Zhao Shangguan the Bamboo Lodge. And it's important that she specifically chooses it for its quiet, its bamboo, its winding railings. It's a perfect match for her personality.
Then you have Jie Yingchun in Zuijinliu and Tan Chun in Qushuangzai.
Shi Chun gets Lia Fengshuan, and the widow Li Shi is given Dao Shangkun the Rice Fragrance Village, which is very fitting with its rustic feel.
And of course, Baoyu gets Yi Hongyuan, the House of Green Delights. And he's thrilled because it's right near Dayu.
And think about the scale again. Each of these new households gets 2 extra wet nurses and 4 new maids on top of the staff they already have, plus cleaning crews.
So on the 22nd, the transformation is complete. The garden goes from this quiet, imperial space to being alive.
It's suddenly filled with flowery embroidered sashes and willow branches wafting fragrant breezes. It's no longer a monument, it's a home. A very, very busy home.
The setting is absolutely everything here. We're in the Grandview Garden, which is, it's essentially a curated aristocratic paradise. It's this massive walled-off space designed for one purpose, to foster refined youth and creativity. The family has built this protective bubble, but this chapter shows us the exact moment that bubble pops. The source is so clear about it. We are watching them go from a world of innocence and carefree joy to one that's suddenly defined by melancholy and really deep introspection.
And the source starts by painting this astonishingly detailed picture of their life in this so-called paradise. It sounds like an absolute cultural boot camp, but, framed as if it's all just playtime. Baoyu moves in, and the text says he is completely satisfied. He has every possible resource, every companion for these cultured pursuits. We're talking reading, writing, zither, chess, painting, composing poetry. The list just goes on. Even complex needlework, drawing mythical birds for embroidery, flower arranging parlor games. It's overwhelming.
It is supposed to be overwhelming in its perfection. That's the whole point. The garden's goal is to keep them perpetually occupied with acceptable, approved expressions of their privilege. He has no lack of things to do, no lack of people to do them with, but the sheer volume and that constant expectation of refinement, it eventually creates a kind of psychological vacuum. And that's when the pivot point arrives. The source gives us this fantastic phrase, Zhengsheng falne.
Trouble arose from stillness. That's a fascinating concept. It's not trouble from conflict or some external threat. It's trouble born from too much peace.
Exactly. And it's not just simple boredom. It's a very specific kind of aristocratic malaise. The family has provided all these acceptable emotional outlets, but nothing that feels dangerous or, truly his. He's bored with the performance of it all, not the creation itself. And so suddenly, despite all this supposed happiness, Baoyu is moody. He finds everything dull. He's looking for something authentic, something that speaks to his inner self, and all the commissioned art is just failing him. And this is perfectly shown through his poetry, right? The source gives us 4 of his seasonal night poems, and they're genuinely talented. Oh, they absolutely show his talent. He's great at capturing authentic feeling and scenery. Take the spring night poem. He asks, "Whose tears does the candle weep?" The imagery is just beautiful, but it already hints at this deep, sort of inherited melancholy, an awareness of sorrow without even knowing the cause. Or the winter poem, where he talks about the pleasure of tea made from freshly swept snow. It's the absolute height of cultured, specific pleasure.
But these poems aren't just for him, are they? They're basically performed for an audience.
They are, and that's the whole problem. The source points out their reception. They were copied and praised by influential people and adored by frivolous youths. So this leads Baoyu to focus entirely on these external matters. His art becomes a public performance. And that external validation, ironically, it doesn't fulfill him. It just deepens the internal vacuum and makes him desperate for stimulation that feels real, even if it's forbidden.
Which brings us directly to the moment the bubble is breached. Baoyu is wandering around, all moody and listless, and his attendant, Minyan, tries to cheer him up. Minyan realizes that all of the accepted, proper amusements have run their course. This is where Baoyu's thirst for the forbidden is finally quenched.
This is the critical turning point in the chapter, for sure. Minyan doesn't bring back a new textbook on Confucian virtue or anything like that. He brings back a trove of illicit material from the local bookshop. And it's a fascinating collection, specifically chosen to shock and enthrall Baoyu.
We're not talking about just one type of book either. The haul includes ancient and modern novels, biographies and accounts of these famous, often tragic or powerful beauties. Think Fei Yan, Heide, Wu Zetian, Yang Guifei, and crucially, opera scripts or Trunki Jingobin.
And why those specific titles? Well, the stories of women like Wu Zetian, the only female emperor of China, or Yang Guifei, whose love story ended in tragedy and political chaos. They offer these narratives of power, desire, and suffering that are just completely absent from the moralistic text Baoyu is supposed to be studying. He's searching for complexity, and complexity often comes with moral ambiguity, which is exactly what the garden is designed to repress.
And his reaction is immediate. He feels he has found a treasure. This forbidden content is suddenly more valuable than any approved classic.
And the thrill is multiplied by the danger. Minyan is genuinely terrified. He gives this strict warning that if anyone finds out, he'll suffer really severe consequences. That fear, that sense that this is a dangerous secret, it just immediately heightens the importance of these texts for Baoyu. It's a real private connection, not like his public poetry.
It literally becomes a cloak and dagger operation inside the family compound. Baoyu immediately sets up this this triage system for his contraband, which tells us so much about his character. He separates out the refined and detailed texts, the ones he probably thinks have real aesthetic merit, and smuggles those into the garden to hide on his bed.
But the vulgar and overt ones, the rougher, maybe purely erotic stuff, he keeps those hidden in the outside study. And this is key. Baoyu is already acting as a kind of critic, trying to justify his reading choices. He keeps the ones that might genuinely corrupt him further away, but the ones that educate his heart, like the opera scripts, he keeps those closest, right next to his pillow. The forbidden literature is now literally nestled in paradise.
And that world-changing moment happens almost immediately with one of those texts. The scene is set in mid-spring. Baoyu is just relaxing by the Qinfeng Sluice Bridge, under the peach blossoms, reading The Romance of the Western Chamber. He's at the line, "Fallen red forms a formation," which just perfectly captures the scene around him.
That phrase is so beautiful, but it also foreshadows his next distraction, which arrives on the wind. It links the romance on the page with the natural tragedy happening all around him.
Right, an unexpected gust of wind blows this huge mass of peach blossoms right onto him and his book. His initial, very practical solution, the solution of a privileged young man, is just to gather them up and dump them in the nearby pool, get them out of sight.
But then the absolute counterpoint to that arrives,
Yeah.
Baoyu. And she's carrying the tools of her own poetic, philosophical melancholy, a flower hoe, a sack, and a broom. This is such a crucial moment for her character.
And she immediately criticizes his method. She points out that just tossing the petals in the water is wrong. Because the water flows out to where people live, it gets polluted with dirt and garbage, and so the flowers are still defiled. Baoyu's solution is superficial. It solves the problem for him, but not for the integrity of the flowers themselves.
Precisely. And her solution is the famous flower tomb. She insists on sweeping them into a silk sack and burying them in a special spot so they can naturally turn to dust. This is an act of profound, almost religious respect for transient beauty. She sees the life cycle of a flower as worthy of a ritual burial.
And while she's having this profound philosophical moment about death and beauty, she spots the forbidden book Baoyu is trying to hide. Baoyu, in a total panic, tries to cover it up, claiming it's some high-minded Confucian classic like The Doctrine of the Mean.
The sheer contrast between the two texts, stuffy Confucian orthodoxy versus a passionate romantic opera script, is what makes Baoyu laugh. She immediately demands to see it. She knows Baoyu far too well.
He confesses. He calls it a truly good book and begs her to keep it a secret, claiming that if she reads it, she'll get so emotionally overwhelmed she would not even want to eat. He's really setting up the expectation here.
And this is where Baoyu just proves her intellectual superiority. She puts down her tools and finishes all 16 acts of the Western Chamber in the time it takes to eat a meal. It's incredible. And she immediately judges the language to be stunning. This isn't a passive act. She's showing she can absorb this forbidden material faster and maybe more completely than he can.
That intellectual speed fuels Baoyu's next mistake, which is to immediately try and apply the novel's intense romantic language to their own relationship. He provokes her by quoting a key line, calling himself the body burdened with worries and sickness, and calling her the appearance that topples states and cities.
Which is just a spectacular literary faux pas in their culture. These phrases carry this immense weight of tragedy and illicit passion. Baoyu's face turns instantly red. She's both genuinely shocked by his audacity and I think deeply, powerfully flattered. She accuses him of reading licentious words and lewd tunes and threatens to tell their elders. Her reaction is so explosive because she recognizes the truth in what he's saying, which makes it terrifying.
Baoyu is terrified by her outburst, and he gives what must be the most absurd, over-the-top apology in the entire novel. He vows that if he was trying to trick her, he should be swallowed by a turtle and turned into a big tortoise to carry her gravestone for a lifetime if she ever becomes a first-rank madam.
It's just ridiculous, but it completely breaks the tension. It shows their dynamic is still rooted in this kind of high-stakes, dramatic, intellectual game. She laughs, but she gets the final cutting word, and she uses language from the very book he just quoted. She snaps back, "Pa, turns out you were a seedling that never came to flower, merely a pewter spear with a silver head."
A pewter spear with a silver head. That phrase, yin yang la kong tu, is such a sharp, memorable critique, something that looks beautiful and substantial on the outside, but is actually brittle and worthless when you test it. She's basically accusing him of being superficial, even as they're solidifying this intimate bond over their shared secret.
And she defends her reading speed, too. She reminds him, why, if you can memorize after one look, why can't I read 10 lines at a glance? This whole exchange is the forbidden literature acting as a catalyst, transforming their innocent friendship into a relationship of intense, vulnerable, intellectual connection.
So Baoyu leaves to attend to a family matter, and Dayu is left alone. She's feeling moody and reflective after that very charged encounter. She walks past Pear Blossom Court and hears female voices practicing opera. Now, she normally dislikes opera, but specific lines catch her ear. This is that crucial transition where the passionate excitement of the Western Chamber gives way to this deep, existential melancholy.
Yeah, she hears lines from the Peony Pavilion, which is a play that's far more philosophical and focused on the tragedy of fleeting life than the drama she just read. The Western Chamber is about taking action for love. The Peony Pavilion is about the realization that all beauty is doomed.
And the first line that stops her is just staggering, especially as a commentary on the garden itself. The purples and reds opened everywhere, yet all are now given to ruined wells and crumbling walls. I mean, that image of life and beauty decaying into ruin must have been a punch to the gut for her, right there in their perfect manicured paradise.
And she stops dead in her tracks, just impressed by the literary quality. Then she hears the next line. How can the good times and beautiful scenery endure, whose court enjoys this pleasurable event? This immediately puts her in a state of confrontation with mortality, with transience.
And this makes her realize that even in a medium she previously dismissed, opera, that good literature exists, but that most people watching probably miss the deeper, more profound meaning. She's moved beyond the intellectual sparring she had with Baoyu.
What's fascinating here is how quickly she moves from that intellectual assessment to complete emotional surrender. The final, overwhelming phrase she hears is the one that just shatters her composure. Because of you, like a flower's beauty, like flowing time years. Ze wei ning ru hui me huan si xiong niu nian.
The source says this phrase makes her heart shake and spirit sway, and it leaves her drunk and obsessed, forcing her to sit down on a rock. That phrase, flowing time years, it's the cumulative synthesis of all her grief.
It connects everything for her. All the other tragic verses she has ever read or remembered. Water flows, flowers fade, both heartless, and flowing water, falling blossoms, spring is gone, heaven and earth. These are all just different ways of saying the same thing, the transience of beauty and the relentless march of time.
And the effect of considering all these verses together, the cumulative weight of all this melancholy knowledge, it causes her heart to ache and her spirit to craze. The scene ends with her weeping uncontrollably on a rock. She has gone from the joy of showing off her reading speed to a complete, painful, emotional surrender.